The year is 2040. Everyone has to verify their identification via eye scanners and fingerprint machines. You can't legally order a pizza without verifying your social credit score is above 419. In order to chat with the boys, Discord checks your government ID to make sure you're old enough to see anime memes. Nobody remembers the time when you could simply open up AIM and send your friend your new Hello World print implementation without 5-factor authentication. I'm in the woods with Luke Smith talking to nobody because we both refuse to allow the snowball effect to occur with respect to surveillance. But I'm not alone. Enter the Matrix. What's up guys, my name is Tony, and today I'm going to give you a quick and painless guide on Matrix. In light of Discord's recent announcement of their age inference model and identification verification, coupled with the fact that Discord is proprietary garbage anyway, there are much better options out there. Matrix is one of those options. Matrix is an open standard for decentralized encrypted communication. It's similar to email in that anyone can run a server and all servers talk to each other. What makes Matrix special is it's got decentralized federation, which allows servers to talk to each other and there's no single point of control. The messages are encrypted by default end to end. The protocol is fully open source, so that means it's fully auditable. You're not locked into one specific client or even one specific server implementation. And there are persistent rooms similar to Discord servers, so it's not just group chats. For today, we're going to show two paths to Matrix. One is the Normie path of least resistance, which is simply setting up an account on matrix.org and joining a public room as needed. And the second path is going to be for the self-hosting enthusiast, which I will show how to do and explain why it is a superior path. Both are better than Discord though, so let's jump right into the tutorial. All right, so let's head over to matrix.org and click try Matrix. And this tiny little banner kind of bothers me, so I'm going to get rid of it here. Just gonna right click this div right here and delete that node. All right, so let's go back into this. So there are tons of clients available, and today we're gonna go with some Electron slop called Element, but it is clean and polished and kind of looks like Discord, so it is usable. It's in Nix packages, and for legacy distros, it should be in Pacman, apt, DNF, and Portage, etc. So let's go ahead and click on this here, and we're going to use it in our browsers today. So all you need to do is create an account here on matrix.org and then hit continue, and then just make a username. And then you're going to have to continue with an email address here, and you would just fill out your email address accordingly here. So for me, it's going to be a@b.com. That is my email. Agree to this. Make sure you're not a robot. I guess there's some traffic lights. I fail this sometimes because I feel a little bit robotic in my soul. But anyway, so we'll go ahead and click continue here. And obviously you got to verify the 6-digit code sent to your email. Now my email is a@b.com. So I'm going to verify that and I'll be right back. All right, so I've verified that 6-digit code with a@b.com and now I'm in. So this is Element here. It kind of looks like Discord. You've got your spaces on the left, which is going to be similar to your servers. No chats yet, but it's going to be your group chats and stuff. So it's going to feel similar to your Discord experience. So once you're in here, you can just join public rooms. And I do have a public room on my server. So I'm actually just going to join my public room from this Normie account. So you're going to hit this search button here on the Element client. And then we'll type into the search bar #Linux:TonyByTheWay.com. And this is my public room here. So we can join this from this account. So we'll click that and there we go. This is our general Linux server here. And that's it. Now I can just send a quick hello world implementation here. Let's do it in C. We'll do it main void. We'll send a printf statement here as a snippet. But yeah, so we've sent our message here to the public channel, and that's it. Welcome to Matrix. No government ID required, no proprietary garbage required. So if you want to stop here and just use matrix.org, that's totally fine. But if you want to self-host your own server so you aren't beholden to matrix.org as a host, I'm going to show you how you can do that next. So before we jump into the self-hosting installation tutorial, I do want to explain a small federation caveat. Now with Matrix Federation, if you allow users on your home server caches everything from any federated server that those users interact with. So if you have a user on your home server that joins some random matrix.org server, then every single message is is cached from that server into your home server, which means you're now liable for all cached content, including content you never saw or approved. This makes you potentially liable for illegal content that you never even knew about. And this is why I prefer XMPP as a protocol, because it doesn't have this problem. But you can also simply avoid this by either doing A, what I do, is not allowing any registration on your server, but make it public facing, or B, just use a matrix.org account instead of self-hosting. And then you're not actually caching anything because matrix.org is the server. All right, so for self-hosting, we're gonna need a few things. And I'm gonna thank Denshi for the B-roll on this. So he bought a laptop for $5 from a thrift store and turned it into a server. So I'll drop a link below the subscribe button on his video on the explanation of that. But yeah, we're gonna need an old laptop, which you can find in your dad's garage or your closet or a thrift store. We're gonna need a domain name, which you can get for $3 a month. And then you're gonna need an internet connection. So we're gonna set this up in our closet on a ThinkPad, and we are gonna use a subdomain of the domain I already own, which is tonybytheway.com. And then we are gonna use NixOS today for deploying this server because it's declarative, it's reproducible, it's really easy to set up. And we're gonna disable registration so that we don't have any liability on federated content. But without further ado, let's jump into the installation. All right, so go ahead and head over to nixos.org. Click that download link and scroll down to the ISOs here. And we're gonna grab the minimal ISO image, 64-bit for Intel and AMD. I've got the minimal ISO loaded up here. So as we load that up here, we're gonna type sudo-i to get into the root account, and we will clear the terminal with Control-L here. So once we jump into the system here, we can go ahead and run lsblk to get the name of our device. We see it's VDA. So we can run cfdisk on dev VDA. And this is going to be an EFI system. So I'm going to use GPT as the label. I'm just going to use two partitions today. One is going to be the boot partition. It's going to be 1 gigabyte. It's going to be EFI system for the type. And the other one is just going to be the remainder of the space. It's going to be a Linux file system. So write that, yes, quit. And I'm going to make the file systems here. So we're going to do mkfs.ext4-L for label NixOS dev VDA2. And then for the boot partition, we'll do mkfs-f32-n boot for the label. That's going to be on dev VDA1. All right, so we can mount these now. So we'll do Control-L to clear the terminal. We'll do mount dev VDA2. We're going to mount that to MNT, and we'll do mount-m to make the directory dev VDA1 MNT boot. And there we go. All right, so now that we've partitioned, created, and mounted our file systems, we're ready to generate the config. So we're going to run NixOS generate config. It's going to be on root, and that's going to be on MNT, which will generate the hardware configuration file and the configuration file that we need. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and cd into mnt etc NixOS. And as we see, we've got those files right here, and we're going to be editing these accordingly. Let's do a vim configuration.nix. We see a lot of bloated comments in here. So what I'm going to do is debloat this by just removing a bunch of comments. I'm going to probably speed this up in the post-production process. All right, so I went ahead and debloated this file here so we can work with it. Let's start at the top. We've got the import section, and that's going to be the hardware configuration.nix. We're going to import one additional file, and that's going to be matrix.nix. And we haven't created that yet, but we will. That's going to be our matrix server configuration. The bootloader information is already good. We've got system deboot enabled, and we've got the EFI variables touchable, if you will, by said bootloader. For network manager, we're going to enable that. And for the host name, let's just name it NixOS Matrix. For the time zone, I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this. And change that to America, Los Angeles. So for the user account, I'll do Control V to enter visual block mode, 6JLX to get rid of those comments. And what we want to do for this user, I'm going to change this user from Alice to Tony. That's my name. And we can get rid of any Tony specific packages because we're just going to use system packages, and we'll set the password manually one time. All right, so now for the packages, same deal here. Control V, 3J, LX. Of course, I want Vim. I want Git. I think that's all we need for right now. All right, and for the services, we want OpenSSH, and we also want Nginx. So we'll do services.nginx.enable equals true. And then to set up a Let's Encrypt, we're going to do security.acme. That's going to equal accept terms equals true. Defaults.email. This is going to be your email here. For me, I'm going to do tony@tonybytheway.com. And that looks pretty good to me. So we've debloated the configuration file to about 40 lines, and that's going to be good for now. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step here. All right, so let's go ahead and create that matrix.nix file. And instead of a YAML config or what have you, this is going to be very clean, but it might be a little bit technically dense. So I will make this more of an example template file in a public repo, and you can simply clone that, and a link will be provided for that below the subscribe button. All right, so let's jump into this matrix file here. Let's do :e mnt etc NixOS matrix.nix. And in this file, let's start the process here. So we're gonna open this up here with a config, packages, and lib, and the spread operator here. Let's declare some variables here. We're gonna make the domain equal tonybytheway.com. And for you guys, your domain is gonna be the domain at which you own. So you can purchase a domain anywhere, somewhere like Epic or what have you. But once you've gotten that domain, you can put your domain here. For me, mine is tonybytheway.com, so I'm going to do that. And my matrix domain is going to be matrix.domain. So it'll be matrix.tonybytheway.com. The client config, that's going to be m.homeserver.base URL. We're going to make that HTTPS matrix domain here. And then the m.identity server, just going to make that empty here. So since the identity server here is empty, that will just tell matrix clients to find the home server where it will be served at .wellknown/matrix/client. So moving on to server config here, we got server config. We're going to make that equal to m.server. And again, that's going to be matrix domain on port 443. This is going to tell other matrix servers where to find ours for federation. It's also going to be served at /.wellknown matrix server. So other matrix servers will know where to find ours for federation through 443. All right, so let's add this helper function here for well-known so we can avoid code duplication later. We'll call it make well-known. It's going to be data, make it a string here. Let's make that default application JSON for the type. We're going to add the header access control allow origin star, and then we're going to return 200, converting this data to JSON. So that'll create the Nginx configuration snippet to respond with CORS headers for the well-known endpoints. All right, so we've got all the variables we need to start creating our configuration here. So we'll use this in keyword here, and we're ready to start configuring. All right, so let's start setting up Synapse here. So we'll do services.matrix Synapse. First of all, we're gonna need to enable it. And then the settings are gonna be server name. The server name is going to be the domain, and the public base URL, it's going to be HTTPS matrix domain. If we look back up here, the matrix domain is matrix.tonybytheway.com. So that's that public facing base URL. So we've got Synapse enabled here, and we've got the server name set to tonybytheway.com, and the public facing base URL set to matrix.tonybytheway.com, which is good for what we need. Let's go ahead and close out a couple of these curly braces. We've got this last one closed out already. So let's add some listeners here. We'll do listeners equals, so we'll listen on port 8008. We'll do bind addresses to localhost here, or 127.0.0.1. Type is going to be HTTP. TLS is false. X forwarded, that's going to be true. And for the resources, we'll do client for the name and federation for the names. And we will set the compression to true. So this will configure Synapse to listen on localhost 8008 for the client and federation traffic. We're not going to need TLS here because Nginx handles that. And X forwarded equals true. We'll trust the proxy headers coming from Nginx. So let's move on to the database configuration. So for the database, we're going to use a Postgres database here. It's going to be PSY-COPG2. We need to allow non-C locales, so we'll do allow unsafe locale equals true. And then for your arguments, we'll do user is going to be matrix synapse. The database is also going to be named matrix synapse, and the host is going to be /run Postgresql. So the database is going to be that Unix socket connection on Postgresql. So we're working on settings here. We've got the listeners, we've got the database. Let's go ahead and add some other settings here. We'll do max upload. So for the max upload size in megabytes, let's set that to 100. So we don't need Nitro to upload a 2 megabyte file. We can just set that here. The URL preview enabled, let's set that to true. As discussed previously, we're going to set enable registration to false, which will disable public registration, so you can only manually register on this server via shared secrets. And then for enable metrics, we have to explicitly set that to false because we don't care about Prometheus metrics. And then we just have to set this registration shared secret path. It's going to be a hard-coded path here. var lib matrix synapse registration secret. And we're almost done with these Synapse settings here. We've got one more thing we got to do, and that's going to be the trusted key servers. We're going to add matrix.org as the server name for the trusted key servers there. And that should be it for the Synapse settings. So let me just quickly take a look at some of these and make sure we've got everything covered. Zoom out a bit here. So we got the domain stuff here. Delete that random line here. The settings, you got the database here. It's correct. Got the miscellaneous settings. Yeah, looks good. So let's keep on moving here. Need to add a block for Postgres as a service. So we'll do services.postgresql. And for this service, we're going to enable it. And then we're going to ensure creation of the matrix synapse database. And for the ensured users, we're just going to make one user here. And that's going to be matrix synapse. We're going to grant ownership to matrix synapse as the user. And that's good to go for the Postgres setup. And the last service we need to ensure and the last service we need to configure is the actual Nginx server. So let's go ahead and do so here. So we'll do services.nginx.virtualhosts. That's going to be that TonyByTheWay.com. And what you're going to do and what I have in my home config is enable Acme and force SSL. And we need to explicitly set the well-known discovery file location for the client and for the server here. So for the server, we're going to do .wellknown/matrix/server. We're going to use our well-known helper function we made, and then we're going to pass in the server config. For the client, same thing here. We'll just replace server here with client, and that looks good. All right, and then for the matrix subdomain, I'm going to create another virtual host, but instead of domain here, we're going to do matrix domain. Same thing here with Acme and force SSL, but the locations are going to be a little bit different here. We'll do proxy pass, and we're going to set a reverse proxy from matrix.tonybytheway.com to the local Synapse on port 8008. So let's set that up here. HTTP 127.0.0.1:8008, and a little bit of extra config here. So for these Nginx extra config settings, we want to preserve the original client's IP address. So without setting the x-forwarded4 remote adder, Synapse is only going to see localhost as a source, but the remote address actually contains the real client IP. So obviously this is required for rate limiting and enforcement banning, etc. And then for forwarded proto, we need to tell the backend whether the original connection was HTTP or HTTPS, and that's what scheme holds for you. What could happen here if you don't set this is that Synapse could generate an HTTP link, even if somebody's connected via HTTPS. So we need to ensure that the scheme matches the original connection. And then to preserve the original host name from the client's request, we're going to set the header explicitly here in Nginx. But yeah, we can edit some firewall configuration and then we should be done with this file. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so all that's left to do now is simply open port 8448 for federation here. So we'll do networking.firewall.allowed TCP ports. That's going to be 8448. And that's going to be it here. So we're good to save and quit that file. So we'll go ahead and see what we have here. We'll do an LSLA. We've got that matrix.nix, the configuration.nix. So all we need now is the flake. All right, so let's generate the flake template here. In order to do that, we're actually gonna have to run this very verbose command here. It's gonna be nix and then specify the experimental feature nix command, and then also specify the experimental feature nix flakes. And there we go, we've got that flake.nix. In this flake, we're gonna open it up with Vim here. Change the description to matrix home server, by the way. Keep everything on unstable here. And then for the outputs, we're gonna change this. We're gonna change all this actually. For the outputs, we're gonna do NixOS configurations.nixOS matrix. It's gonna be our host name. We'll do nixpackages.lib.nixOS system. We'll do system equals x86 64-Linux. The module is gonna be configuration.nix, and that's it. It's a very super minimal flake here. So we are ready to install our system here. We're gonna go ahead and run NixOS install --flake mnt etc NixOS, and that's gonna be NixOS matrix. And then just gonna let that rip here. All right, looks like there were no syntax errors in any of those files, which is good. And again, we can ignore that boot warning. It's just going to complain that boot is readable by all users. It's totally fine for us in our context because we just have the one user here. So for the password, this is going to be your password for your user to access this machine as root. We also want to set a password for the Tony user that we created. So we'll do NixOS enter --root mnt, and then we're going to run this as the shell command, and there we go. So we are good to reboot here, so let's go ahead and do that. So at the systemd boot, I've rebooted and I see the NixOS services, so let's log into our user Tony. Perfect. Do a set font -d systemttl status matrix Synapse, and there we go. It's running. Perfect. Let's take a look at the Postgresql. Perfect. That's also running. And then let's take a look at Nginx. And there we go. So it looks like all three services are good to go. And we are ready to create admin account and create some public rooms. So let's create a new user here. We're going to run sudo matrix synapse register new matrix user. So for the local part, I'm going to do Tony. For the password, we'll set that up here. And then I'm going to make it an admin. And there we go. So once you've done that, you're ready to move on to the next step, which is configuring your server in a client. So you can just let this server hang and just never touch it again, and then access it through other machines. So I've logged back into Element, but this time I've used my tonybytheway.com domain instead of the matrix.org Normie domain. And I have the admin account that I just set up. So from here, you can literally just create a new room here, and I can make a public room here. And so since I'm converting people over from Discord to Matrix here, let's just use one of my Discord rooms. And I have a Discord room for code review. So we'll call it the code review. And the topic will be hello world print discussions and implementations. It's going to be a public room. We'll call it code:Tonybytheway.com. Just create that room. So if I want to, I can just post this in the general Linux channel here. So I've got the general Linux room. I've got the Rice room here where you can post some of your Rices. And then I've got a room here for OXWM to kind of discuss some OXWM stuff. So like I said earlier, it looks like Discord. We've got basically channels here, and look, we got somebody already joining the room here. So we're going to migrate from Discord over to Matrix and XMPP. I will still keep the Discord server up, but for the time being, I'm going to try to migrate over here to Matrix. And if you want to find me, it's going to be easier to reach me on Matrix. But yeah. All right. Thank you so much for checking out the video here. If you have any questions about Matrix or XMPP or anything Linux, BSD, or free and open source software related, drop a comment and I will put it in the pipeline. So the thing about Matrix, is it perfect? No. Is it as polished as Discord? No. Are there federation issues? Yes. But will Matrix ask you for your driver's license? Well, no, because you will self-host the server. Will Matrix ban you for thinking incorrectly or thinking outside the box? No, because again, you will host your server. Does Matrix scan your messages for advertisements? Again, no, because you're going to host your server. Does Matrix force you to agree to a new terms of service every 3 months? No. Does Matrix have a new update every other day because somebody at the Discord company has to validate their job time? No. Okay, so as I said, thanks for checking out the video. Come join me over on Matrix. Come join me on XMPP. And as always, I could not end the video without an obligatory Neofetch.